The biggest success where I see Yulu is doing really well is through delivery boys.
So that's the narrative too, right? So we did this for Yulu about 4 years back, and it went viral. And then came COVID, and when COVID hit, the key customers, which were all of these people, they started to not use it because they were not going out of the house, right? And surprisingly, delivery boys took over, and they started using Yulu bikes all of a sudden. And the next 2 years, last year when we kind of met the Yulu team, they said, hey, today 80% of our business is delivery.
Yes.
And that's great, but that's diluted our brand, right?
Yeah.
Because what we built initially was for the people, right? And now it's getting used by the delivery guys. So
which is logistics services.
Right? So now what happens is, if you look at Ola or a Uber, they drive a Swift Desire, they drive a Etios, you would never buy it. Because as a consumer, you don't want to buy the same product which the delivery guy is using, right? So hence they called us again. They said, hey, now the scenario has changed. Now we have grown bigger and better. We have a delivery vertical, and we also want to make sure our personal mobility doesn't die, because delivery is great, but we want to have the personal mobility as well. And they said, now that we have scaled up, we also want to sell these bikes as a entity. Right, like how you buy a TVS scooter, they want to sell a Yulu bike as well to you.
Okay, like a product.
Like a product.
Okay.
So now the problem became threefold. Well, you have a master brand which is great, which works, because if you look at our video and the narrative around the brand, it doesn't talk about who's the user. It talks about how it's empowering the country, how it's clean, green, how it's going to save a lot of things, how it's going to connect you to the end mile, which still remains true. But you have 3 different problems to solve now. So we did the part 2. Last year. It's still being continued. It's a year-long assignment. So we started with now understanding how the delivery boy's perception is, right? Because that's the key audience for the Yulu delivery environment. And they were already in the process of launching the decks, the grey color scooters you would have seen, which are now used by delivery boys.
Slightly taller,
with a carrier at the back.
Yes.
So we went with that, and we realized that it has to be divided. So we now divided the brand into 3 different areas. The Yulu Personal, which is, for a person to buy and keep at home. You could charge your batteries at home, or you could just go to a swiping station and swipe it. Then there is Yulu Delivery, which kind of caters to the delivery boys. And then there is the shared mobility, which still stays as a primary variant. And now they have 3 different vehicle set that they're launching for 3 different things.
What is the difference between angel investor versus someone who take a risk on high risk stocks? Person who invests on high risk stocks. What is the difference?
I would say high risk stock is still a risk, big risk, but you will just do it on an app and forget about it.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe you use any of the share market apps, and you expect it to give you 40-50% returns, maybe 30% returns over a year. When you are an angel investor, it's a hit or miss. Out of 10 investment, probably 1 will fly, but that 1 will probably give you 20x return. You never know. Right. And also, it's also about a conviction in a founder, conviction in the idea. If you think the idea would fly, you probably go ahead and invest some money, or you kind of do some consulting or help.
Okay. Mr. Narayan Murthy have quoted recently his comment on working 70 hours a week. So what's your take on that?
I'll tell you something. Okay. So if you own a company, it's a very different ballgame. It's your baby when you start, right? You might be okay putting in 70 hours a week, right? As I founder, sometimes I work 60 hours a week. I don't work beyond that, by the way. I believe that if I do that, I'll get overburnt and I'll end up wasting the next 1 week, maybe trying to get that tiredness out of my body. So I try to maintain a balance. It's very difficult. A lot of my family members crib about it. They say that, hey, you don't give enough time at home and you're always working and everything. And so I try at least my weekends to not take up anything else, but have a good sleep, go out with my pets, spend quality time with my family. But I feel as an employee, right, if you are offering somebody a job, they look at it like a job, right? While they are dedicated to your company, they follow your vision and they want to work and grow with you. Nobody wants to burn 70 hours, to be honest, in a week. It is very, very difficult and tedious. And at the end of the day, they'll always go back with the question, hey, what's in it for me? And if I'm going to leave all of the checks and balances of my life and do this, how will it pan out? So I feel it's a little unhealthy to work so much. But I feel the problem which, one of the veterans in the industry is trying to address, and my perspective to it is that as Indians, we waste a lot of time. If we are to work 40 hours a week, we'll probably work 25, and the 15 hours goes into all the other chit chats, not being. So I think it's more about productivity. If you're a productive person and if you're able to even spend 35 hours of quality time in a week onto your work, I think that gets the job done.
Toxic work environment. What's your take on that? According to you, what is a toxic work environment?
I think it is to do with a lot of people. Nobody can solve it completely. It could be our organization, outside of our organization, anywhere. It gets created with certain issues happening in the middle of the layers, below the layers. And sometimes as a founder, you won't be able to predict it also, right? Could be maybe few wrong hires in the wrong places, maybe few managers which people are not being able to work with. Few managers which don't have managerial traits can also percolate this inside. Groupism within your organization can also percolate it. So as a founder, while you're at the top, there's always, you eventually know what's happening everywhere in the organization, right? A lot of times, a lot of founders ignore it because it's good for business is going great, profits are coming in. Sometimes you need to take harsh steps. You need to ensure that if there is anything wrong happening in the organization, that's course corrected. You might end up losing some of the best people you have from a functional standpoint, but I think if the culture is getting deteriorated, you need to kind of figure out why and what, and then address that to make an environment which is workable for people.
Today I will be conversing with Ronak Daga, who is founder and CEO of Red Baton. Red Baton is design-led product consulting and engineering company. In today's conversation, we will be discussing about Ronak's journey as an angel investor and a CEO of his company, and one of his challenging projects with Yulu, and recent Narayan Murthy's controversial statement of 70 hours per week working culture among youths of India. I am Saravana Bhava, co-founder of TechEyes. TechEyes is an online programming school. I'll leave the link in the description for our service. You can just check it out. If you're interested in long format conversation, please leave a like and subscribe to this channel. So hi Ronak.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Same here.
I would like to know more about yourself and a quick story of how you started Red Baton.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I started my journey in 2015 with Red Baton. It's been about 8 years. So I did my engineering, like most of the people in India do. Did it in 2014, graduated from NIT Surathkal in Karnataka. Did metallurgy and material sciences, which is very different from what I do today. So when I started off in my engineering career, I realized there's something that I don't want to do in life. Started getting very interested in creative space. Initially because in my college, there used to be a lot of fest activities, stuff like that. So I said, hey, these posters are looking nice. People do a lot of design work, videos, small website landing pages for the campaigns that are happening in college for these college student events. That got me interested. Started learning Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects. Eventually, got into this industry. So that's how I learned. And then in third year of my college, I started my first company. It was called Impressions.
Impressions.
Yeah.
What's Impressions about?
So what we used to do was we looked at these notebooks, which are third-party manufactured notebooks. There's this company called Schoolbook Company in Bangalore, which used to manufacture.
You say notebook, physical
notebooks.
Okay.
Physical notebooks, because that was what people was using the most at that point of time. So we went to Schoolbook Company and we proposed an idea to them, saying, hey, why don't we redesign these to compete with your classmates of the world. So that was the idea. We started with that. And then we started putting ads inside the notebooks. So ads and physical discount coupons, etc. for different stores in that area. So Mangalore, Manipal, things like that.
You put inside the notebooks, there will be coupons?
Yeah, so the back page, last page, there was a coupons page, which the students could utilize and go and get discounts from variety of places that they could essentially kind of take the notebook and operate at. So, and we also put ads on the back covers, etc. So that became a success. This was the first success. Did that for a couple of years, realized that it is not very scalable as a business model. So then when we kind of sold it off to Schoolbook Company, they still operate it. It's been almost 10 years. It's running. They've been running ads for over a decade now on these notebooks. So that was the first venture, then got into graphic design. From there, I got into, more of ads, creative. Then my college, in my final year, I realized that, we didn't have a student portal. We didn't have anything where students could, go in, log in, get the details of exams. Everything was very physical or on WhatsApp at that point of time. The technology was not very evolved, right? It was still growing. So that was the first time where we started doing web design. That's when I got my hands into web design. Learned it by myself. Then wanted to get a job because obviously need to pay my bills. So came here, joined a company as a business analyst. Did that for 4 months. Didn't really enjoy doing it. So then I kind of shifted gears again, started freelancing, and then eventually landed my first big customer. We started working with Big Basket, and then came No Broker.
Okay.
And then the journey started.
You got into Big Basket as your customer?
Yes.
So for what service?
So initially it was more of graphic design. So we used to do a lot of work on graphic design. Back then partner, we used to, have a Behance profile. That was the thing.
There are a lot of graphic designers definitely watching this video. Yeah. How did you got Big Basket? That story I would like to know.
Wow, okay. So when I started freelancing along with my first job, me and my partner, we were used to go on different Facebook groups. There are a lot of groups like Put Me in Touch or, freelancer job gigs, etc. For us as freelancers, small money was also okay. Like you do 5,000-10,000 rupees, that's great money for a freelancer, right? When you're doing it alongside a job. So we were doing that, and one of the guys who was working with NH7 Weekender, now Paytm Insider, eventually OML acquired it. They wanted to get some graphics done. So we kind of landed that deal through a Facebook group, met this person, and then that we put it up on Behance, and that got viral. A lot of people really liked it.
Okay.
A lot of people started approaching us for jobs. They were like, hey, why don't you guys join us as a graphic designer?
Can we see that design which got viral? So is it on Behance
right now? It should be on Behance.
Okay, you'll show me. I'll show that on the screen later.
Perfect. I basically, maybe it is about 2015. So it's been about 8 years. So we did that, and then that caught an eye of an agency which is based out of Koramangala. Now they're in MG Road, called Hive Minds. So their Jyotirmay was a founder. And she reached out to us, and then they were like, hey, would you guys like to join us? So we said, no, we don't want to join you, but we can work with you. So their first customer that they wanted to want us to work with was Big Basket. So through them, we kind of collaborated, and Big Basket.
So what project you did for Big Basket?
So we used to handle all of their social media handles from a creative standpoint. So anything creative, anything graphics that was going there, we were doing it. And we did that for a good 3 to 4 years. So 2015 to 2019, almost for 4 years, we managed it. So that was the first break, enough for us to quit our jobs and kind of do this as a full-time profession, so that we could at least pay our basic bills. And we were very young, we were like 23 years old when I started the company. So that's what got us started. And then we never looked back. We just kind of kept going, meeting people, kept getting new and new projects. Then I think we were doing mostly graphics for the first 1 year, and some websites and stuff, because I've had fairly hands-on experience into building websites, etc. But then when that started catching on, I started getting interested in user experience, which is our massive chunk of the business today. It's a field where a lot of graphic designers, IT professionals want to transition into as well today, right? Very highly in demand. So it was about in 2016 when we started using this software for HR. It was called Great HR, right? It's a Koramangala based company, and they serve close to about I think 100,000 users, easy. So we saw their admin panel, and it was very confusing for us to do it, because we were only 10-20 people in the company, and there was no HR. So we used to get our hands dirty and do everything. So we didn't like the user experience as such, which the software was providing. So
HR, name of the software, HR?
Great HR.
Great HR. Okay.
Greyt HR. It's pretty popular. I think now the likes of Quaker and Darwin Box has kicked in, but back then they were they're still one of the market leaders. So we saw that, and then I wrote to the founder and the CTO saying, hey, we've been a customer for your software. We feel there is a tremendous need for, user experience change, which will enable a lot of customers to kind of use the software more seamlessly.
Okay, by this time you're still working as a freelance designer?
No, so we had started Red Baton in 2015. So post the Big Basket kind of contract came through, we quit our jobs and we started this full time. So being into this 1 year, the first 1 year, we were about 7-8 people. then this transition happened. So at that point in time, we were doing largely graphic design.
Okay, as a team.
As a team.
Okay.
As a team. So we used to handle social media handles for some of the brands. We used to do graphic design retainers like banners, emailers, posters, stuff like that. We used to also do small websites, right? Like, real estate websites or anyone's static websites and landing pages, things like that. And we were looking to get into this like a full-time into enterprise UX, because that's where interesting challenges are, right? When you start building enterprise softwares, that's where a lot of challenge in design comes in. And we were keen on doing that. So that's when we looked at Great HR and we wrote to the founder. And they luckily liked it, and they said, hey, why don't you guys, try this out and work with us? So we did a small pitch. They liked it. Then we started designing. So that was the first enterprise software redesign.
Okay, you just designed UX, or you did the front end and the complete delivery of that new upgrade you were involved, or just the UX?
Just the UX. Okay. So when we started, we were a graphic design company.
Okay.
From there, we transitioned into becoming a user experience studio, which was delivering largely the UI UX part of things, because we are not from, like, I am from an engineering college, but I don't have a technical background.
Okay.
So for me, it was very difficult to understand tech at that point in time in life. So it was largely on the user experience side. So we designed it, and then we used to work with the developers and hand it over in terms of how it should be kind of built out, what does the model look like, things like that. So started with that, and then the team kind of kept growing. I think 2017, 2018, we were about 30 people, almost 15 of them in user experience, 15 in graphic design, branding, stuff like that. So yeah, that's how the journey started. And then eventually when I got into the industry, I think about 3 or 4 years into it, I started realizing that, these are silos pieces. They can't work together if you don't have everything in-house, right? So the perception is that when you start a brand, right, if you look at large entities or larger companies which have grown a little bigger, there's a brand team which takes care of your branding, identity, or marketing. And then there's a product team or the tech team which takes care of your tech product, core tech product. And a lot of times what we see is that there is, a lot of asynchronicity between the two. So suppose the brand has a particular color guideline, variation, etc. When it comes to applying it on the product, it becomes absolutely different. And then a lot of problems start kicking in, right? The marketing says, hey, we're going to market it like X. Product says no, but it works better with Y. Sales have their own criteria of making a pitch to sell the product. And that's where the big problem starts coming into the system. So we realized that for us to be able to kind of get this together, we need to solve the entire chain or the entire process of how this is being done, right? And hence we already had a brand and marketing team. We built a very large user experience unit, which we are still the specialist in today, and we have about 40 plus designers and researchers in-house. And then we realized that whatever design we make, right, it does not essentially get converted to code. We design X, the code will be X minus Y. Yeah. And it's maybe some percentages behind what the actual experience should be.
So your vision for the design, it's not able to be delivered as an end product. So you wanted to offer even that.
Even that, right? So it started with that, and then we started looking at, from there on it became more of a holistic experience. And today's Gen and time people call user experience. But we believe that in order to deliver this user experience to your end consumer, you need to go ahead and do something more. Right? If you look at most product companies today, they've been kind of evolved, and now they have a PM team, they have a user experience team, they have a UI team, they have a tech team, they have a research team. Now, when this integration works together, right, you are able to deliver products much better.
Yeah.
Right. And today's age and time, everybody wants to do design first products because that captures what your user really wants, and then it kind of percolates into engineering and then so on and so forth. So we wanted to kind of build an environment which would solve for this end mile, and hence we repositioned ourselves to becoming a global design and human experience company, as we call it today.
Like a servicing company.
Like a services company. Right?
IT services. Yeah.
I would not say IT services. I would still say we are a design-led product consulting company. We are different from IT services as such, because IT services will offer you probably everything under the IT gamut, or maybe a service could be SAP, could be Salesforce, could be something else. Our core moat is to deliver products which are design-led. So we lead with user experience, and then we kind of deliver it with engineering.
Okay. So you have in-house developers right now?
Yeah. So we have a development team of about 40 people. We have a design team of about 40 people. Then we also have a UX UI research team, which is essentially looking at how these products are being perceived outside, how do people use it, are they really usable or not, how can we kind of build around that. And then we also have a brand and marketing team which delivers your identity design and things like that. So combinedly, it kind of completes the entire gamut. So to give you an example, right, one very interesting proposition that we kind of fulfill for our customers. A lot of you would have driven the Yulu bikes, which are now very, very famous. Everybody's kind of using it. So about 4 years back, when Yulu was kind of at the start of their journey, they came to us and said, hey, we have a very simple problem to solve. We are a cycle sharing company today, and we want to become the biggest micromobility player in the country, right? Now, what is micromobility as per them? They said,
from your house to the train station.
To the train station, right? Anywhere where there's a gap, which our public transport is not being able to solve, we'll probably offer that as a solution, right? And it's not just, and how do you do that, right? It can't be just vehicles. You need vehicles, you need servicing, you need charging stations, you need pretty much everything around it to kind of be built. So we got talking to Amit, who's the founder, and I found his vision to be superb and amazing, because that's solving for a lot of things, not just your commute, but also for the country on whole. The pollution is reducing, country is becoming greener. It can also take over traffic in a lot of sense. So it was a great problem to solve. So we started right from the start, where we did the research. We said, hey, who are the audience going to be? So they're usually first time jobbers who are essentially taking the first jobs, 20 to 24, 25 years of age, just got into the city, they don't have a transport. And Bangalore condition, right? You can't find cabs easily. So those guys. Then we also looked at housewives, people who are homemakers, right? They want to do small chores. They want to maybe go and get grocery from nearby. They have to rely on someone to drive them, or they have to take an auto or a cab. We also looked at the older ones in the family, right? The elderly, who essentially want to go around somewhere. Scooters are too heavy to drive. These are very small scooters. They have a good speed limit of 20 kilometers per hour. We also looked at kids, because 16 to 18 is also permissible to drive this, because it's like electric EV with just 20 kilometers per speed, right? So we spoke to all of them. We've tried to figure out what exactly do they want and need. We did about 70 plus interviews to understand the needs and wants. And then we came up with the brand identity, the logo of Yulu bikes that you see. There's a video, probably I can share that with you as well, which tells about the brand story. And that narrative became extremely powerful, and this is a single narrative that we gave them, and they really loved the logo, and hence they adopted it. So that is where it kind of got started.
So you did any app UI UX development for Yulu app?
Yeah, so I think once we crossed the bridge of setting the brand in place, then came the user experience problem, right? Because a lot of companies, right, they look at it in silos. The brand goes separate, the product goes separate, and then the engineering, they work together. So we wanted to do the complete fitment. So we did the research. We then adopted it into digital channels. So their key digital channels are the website and the mobile app. So we designed and developed the complete website. We also designed the UX for the mobile app when they have the in-house development team to develop it. So we developed it from a perspective of, hey, now the cycle is going to get off-faded eventually. The EVs are going to come in. How do the people use the EV? How do they want to look at a ride while it's in progress? How do they find a particular zone to leave the bike, because you can't leave them anywhere on the road? So we kind of solved for each of these problems and built the user experience for that application. And then it went live. And today, it's a success story. We have a million plus kilometers running.
The interesting fact about Yulu is, of course, it's solving the problem of micromobility. But the biggest success where I see Yulu is doing really well is through delivery boys. They are the primary customers or the users of Yulu.
So that's the narrative too, right? So we did this for Yulu about 4 years back, and it went viral. And then came COVID, and when COVID hit, the key customers, which were all of these people, they started to not use it because they were not going out of the house, right? And surprisingly, delivery boys took over, and they started using Yulu bikes all of a sudden. And the next 2 years, last year when we kind of met the Yulu team, they said, hey, today 80% of our business is delivery. And that's great, but that's diluted our brand, right? Because what we built initially was for
for people.
For the people, right? And now it's getting used by the delivery guys. So
which is logistics services.
Which is logistics services, right? So now what happens is if you look at Ola or a Uber, they drive a Swift Desire, they drive a Etios, you would never buy it.
Yeah.
Because as a consumer, you don't want to buy the same product which the delivery guy is using, right? So hence they called us again. They said, hey, now the scenario has changed. Now we have grown bigger and better. We have a delivery vertical, and we also want to make sure our personal mobility doesn't die, because delivery is great, but we want to have the personal mobility as well. And they said, now that we have scaled up, we also want to sell these bikes as a entity. Right, like how you buy a TVS scooter, they want to sell a Yulu bike as well to you.
Okay, like a product.
Like a product.
Okay.
So now the problem became threefold. Well, you have a master brand which is great, which works, because if you look at our video and the narrative around the brand, it doesn't talk about who is the user. It talks about how it's empowering the country, how it's clean, green, how it's going to save a lot of things, how it's going to connect you to the end mile, which still remains true. But you have three different problems to solve now. So we did the part 2. Last year. It's still being continued. It's a year-long assignment. So we started with now understanding how the delivery boy's perception is, right? Because that's the key audience for the Yulu delivery environment. And they were already in the process of launching the decks, the grey color scooters you would have seen, which are now used by delivery boys.
Slightly taller,
with a carrier at the back.
Yes.
So we went with that, and we realized that it has to be divided. So we now divided the brand into 3 different areas. The Yulu Personal, which is, for a person to buy and keep at home. You could charge your batteries at home, or you could just go to a swiping station and swipe it. Then there is Yulu Delivery, which kind of caters to the delivery boys. And then there is the shared mobility, which still stays as a primary variant. And now they have 3 different vehicle set that they're launching for 3 different things.
Okay.
So our idea this time, our problem to solve was, hey, we have a master brand, we want to hold it, but we don't want to dilute the other 2 aspects because of the delivery. So how do you solve for that? So then we started working with them very closely to solve the entire, hierarchy in their brand and how each of these users would essentially start using the vehicle. So we went and spoke to delivery boys, the homeowners, the kids, the elderly, the jobbers, and people who want to maybe buy this scooter. It's a low-cost scooter, maybe solves for your nearby commute. So I think the elderly, the women in the house, the kids are the users for that. That was our hypothesis. And then we had the delivery guys, and then we had the guys who use it for fun, for joyrides, for going to office and things like that. So we segmented the audience. We went out, we did interviews with them, understood their key needs and wants, and how they want to kind of go about it. Once we had that data, we then enabled from that qualitative data into 2 aspects. One is your brand aspect, where how do you differentiate these 3 as a standalone brand, which is Yulu, but then you need to differentiate it for 3 different people. And then the second aspect was the user experience. How will the delivery boys use it versus somebody who has a personal vehicle use it versus somebody who has sharing vehicle uses it. So that's how the branching happens. So we designed, and the thought process behind it, the visual, the user experience. Once that is completely done, then we kind of hand it off to the engineering, then they build the products, we roll it out. And then once it's rolled out, then you need to keep researching, right?
The product is nothing but the app, right?
It's
like the Yulu app. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So then how does it kind of communicates? Not just within the app, but outside the app. How does your advertisement communicate?
So all the Yulu app is designed and developed by your Red Baton team?
No, so we are consultants in the user experience and the brand side, and then they do it in-house.
Development is in-house.
It's all in-house, right?
Okay.
So they take care of it in-house. So because a lot of IP, and then they have their own way of working, right? So that's how we work with a lot of brands, including the likes of Unilever. We have Blue Yonder. We work with Deloitte. Some of the big brands, right?
So all these are domestic companies.
Most of it is domestic. I would say we've recently got 3 big customers in the US.
Okay.
But for the first 7 years of our business, we were primarily serving to the domestic audience.
Domestic. So how do you reach out to the domestic customers? What is the primary mode of reaching out?
So I think for the first 7 years, we never had a sales team. So everything was inbound and referral.
Okay.
So when you are into a business where you're serving someone, or you're into services, whether it's design, whether it's IT, whether it's brand, I think the primary driver is your work. You do good work, it speaks for you, and then people keep referring you. So to the biggest of the clients like Unilever, it's always been a referral, right? So you've gotten multiple referrals, and that's kind of grown the business to almost about 80 people from 2 people. So that works. But when we hit about an 80 people mark and a certain revenue in X number of $1 million, we realized that it's not going to work in future. And hence, the last 1 year, started setting up a sales team which will enable new connections, reach out
Outbound sales.
Outbound sales. So yeah.
Okay, so that's how the story is.
That's how.
So you're also an angel investor, right?
Recently started doing that.
So it's very fancy term, angel investor, because angel investors are those who fund budding or seed level
Even pre-seed idea stage.
yes, ideation stage startups. Probably you invest on them. So your journey of becoming an angel investor.
That's very interesting. So started about 2 years back. EdTech was on the rise. During COVID especially, everybody was kind of scaling up massive folds. So first one started with a friend of mine. Been in a bunch of large companies for Byju's, Amazon Academy, etc. Been at tech for a really long time. And I have another friend who's sitting in Kota. He's been a physics professor for almost a decade, right?
Okay.
So I was kind of talking to them, and they had a very interesting idea because at that point of time, content was a thing, right? Everybody wanted to produce millions and millions of content pieces. So I started looking at from a very services lens, because I come from a services background. So for me, services inherently comes very naturally. While we build a lot of products, how do you scale services is something which my core focus has been. So the idea was today Byju's or an Unacademy or Brainly or Doubtnut, there are millions of them. They produce content on a day-to-day basis, and this content is large, right? You're looking at 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 questions a day. Questions could be textual, could be video questions, could be multiple things, right? And then these go to different vendors. So there are these small edtech services companies which have come up in India to make this content. And the biggest problem is we saw that everything was happening on Excel sheets. Right? Excel and Excels, tons of Excel for every chapter, every book, every question. And then there are teachers who will solve this, put a link somewhere, then somebody will go check it. Then he'll put a link, say QA, etc., then it gets punched into a CMS system, then gets consumed in the application layer. And once it's consumed, it's when they realize that, oh, there are errors, there are problems, kids are not able to perceive it, so many issues. So these guys, we got together and came up with the idea that say, hey, this works. There's a big problem in the market. How do we solve for it? Because the transactions are huge. You're doing 10 million questions a month, which is roughly translating to a lot of money, like maybe $100 million in content spends every month. So that's $1 billion idea in itself. So he said, hey, why don't we solve for it? So these guys were good. They have the industry experience, but they don't have the right set of people, the money to kind of build it. That's where my journey started. I kind of helped them to build out the product. It went pretty far from a pre-seed stage where it was just an idea to being an actual product. We demoed it to a bunch of big edtech companies which said, hey, we want to adopt it. And then came the edtech crashing bubble. Out of 10 of our target potential customers, 7 of them got shut down or on the verge of shutdown, and the remaining, the story, the tech kind of kept falling. So it started there. It wasn't a success, but it was a good start.
Okay.
After that, I moved on to thinking of maybe investing in ideas which could be worth the while.
Okay.
The first one came with a junior of mine, Priyesh, who runs a company called Safe. SAYF. They're into fintech services. They give cashbacks as a reward. I found that it would be very interesting in large space to be solved for. They're lacking with their user experience bit, some bit on the technology. Started helping them there. Eventually kind of got onboarded as an investor. So that happened. Then recently came across a consumer tech company which is called Pathar. They are basically building I will not say self-help, largely into measurement related stuff.
Okay. So using AR.
Not AR, it's very basic problem solving.
Using camera?
Some of them using camera, some of them just Excel sheets. Things have been going on paper, trying to automate that. So they have a product which helps Marble and Granite guys to make sheets. About 3 months back, they started off close to about 3,000 users, all organic. On the application, they're solving for land, they're solving for land measurement, sheet measurement, glass measurement, tile measurement. So that's the idea, and then eventually build an ecosystem on top of it, which will be a marketplace kind of a model. Very segmented industry, so I thought of investing in that. So that's how it kind of came into being, and now I'm just looking at good ideas to kind of invest in.
Okay, I want to know this difference. What is the difference between angel investor versus someone who take a risk on high risk stocks. Person who invests on high risk stocks.
See,
what is the difference?
I would say high risk stock is still a risk, big risk, but you will just do it on an app and forget about it.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe you use any of the share market apps and you expect it to give you 40-50% returns, maybe 30% returns over a year. When you are an angel investor, it's a hit or miss. Out of 10 investment, probably one will fly, but that one will probably give you 20x return. You never know.
Yeah.
Right. And also, it's also about a conviction in the founder, conviction in the idea. If you think the idea would fly, you probably go ahead and invest some money, or you kind of do some consulting or help.
Okay.
Right. So
when I come to you as an founder and I have a brilliant business idea, and I pitch my idea to you, and what would be your first you want to invest on my idea, so what will be your first term or negotiating point with me?
So I think because I am not at the VC level where they kind of do a lot of negotiation, I think a lot of ideas that come to us, or at least to me, I look at one, the conviction of the founders, the pedigree. Are they the right people to solve it? Can they deliver it? And the third is, how big is the idea, right? If it's of large scale, then why not? So these are three core parameters that I look at.
So what do you ask in return?
So we look at the idea. If it's already a pre-built stage or a build stage, what could be the potential market size? And then I go back and do my own analysis on how the industry is. Can it scale, not scale? If it's at the production side, what is the traction? Are they able to get people onto it? What is the use case? Are people using it or not? Are they invested in it or not? And also look at what the long-term goal of a founder is, right? Do they want to build a valuation-based company? Do they want to build a true value company? What are they looking at? What is the aspiration, right? Some founders are okay to build a $50 million company and be okay with it. Some founders want to build a unicorn. Both are okay in their own ways, but then, you need to understand what the pedigree is and how people kind of look at their idea, because when anybody comes to you with their idea, they think it's a $1 billion idea, right? But so we usually try to get at least a baseline data, and then I try to do my own analysis in my free time to understand, if this is actually going to fly or not.
Okay, so invest on these company and take a percentage, like 20. What is the average percentage?
It's very small for angel investors. It could be anywhere between 0.5 to maybe 2-3%.
Really? Only that much?
Yeah.
Okay.
I invest very less amount today, but if you look at the VC funds, they invest in the lakhs of millions of dollars. So I think a lot of angel investors do small ticket investing.
Okay. To understand the perspective of a small ticket investing, what is the average small ticket size in angel investing?
Could be anything. It depends on the startup founders and what they want to pick up. It could be anywhere between 5 to 50 lakhs.
5 to 50 lakhs is to start investing as an angel investor
in startups. You can do that, but also it depends on the founders, right? A lot of founders, if they are very bullish about how their company is going to function, they'll be very selective about the angel investors who come into the pool. They wouldn't want to take money from everybody and anybody, because there's certain expertise that you bring to the company as well. For me, a lot of founders who work with me are largely because I know user experience really well, and that's one core of the product. I can do a lot of product consulting, what to build in the MVP stage. So it's not just purely money per se in the table, but also the kind of experience that the investor brings in. So a lot of people also, like most of the founders that I have kind of worked with, they look for that pedigree. Okay, this guy is really good at growth, marketing, tech, user experience, probably is very well connected to the VC industry, could help me open doors to the future. So a lot of founders look at who's your top investors, right? Even if tomorrow, if I have to build a product company, I'd probably tier it down. Do I want to raise money from maybe 100 angels? I will probably say my priority one is these 10 guys, my P2 is this 20 guys, my P3 is this 40 guys. So everybody would want to tear them down because they would want to have a person where they are very weak at, right? It's a partnership. It's not just putting money, but it's also a partnership. So a lot of founders, they look at that in terms of, hey, these are top 10 guys that I want to be my angel investor or the early investors in my company.
Since you are young and you started your own company as a designer or a freelancer, and from straight out of college, and right now you're become an angel investor and you're trying to expand your company to global sphere, I want to ask you this question. Mr. Narayan Murthy have quoted recently his comment on working 70 hours a week. So what's your take on that? Because you have worked, right now you're a business leader and you're an investor. So it's a interesting, you carry an interesting portfolio. Yeah.
I'll tell you something. Okay. So if you own a company, it's a very different ballgame. It's your baby when you start, right?
Yeah.
You might be okay putting in 70 hours a week, right? As a founder, sometimes I work 60 hours a week. I don't work beyond that, by the way. I believe that if I do that, I'll get overburnt and I'll end up wasting the next 1 week, maybe trying to get the tiredness out of my body. So I try to maintain a balance. It's very difficult. A lot of my family members crib about it. They say that, hey, you don't give enough time at home and you're always working and everything. And so I try at least my weekends to not take up anything else, but have a good sleep, go out with my pets, spend quality time with my family. But I feel as an employee, right, if you are offering somebody a job, they look at it like a job, right? While they are dedicated to your company, they follow your vision and they want to work and grow with you. Nobody wants to burn 70 hours, to be honest, in a week. It is very, very difficult and tedious. And at the end of the day, they'll always go back with the question, hey, what's in it for me? And if I'm going to leave all of the checks and balances of my life and do this, how will it pan out? So I feel it's a little unhealthy to work so much. But I feel the problem which, one of the veterans in the industry is trying to address, and my perspective to it is that as Indians, we waste a lot of time. If we are to work 40 hours a week, we'll probably work 25 and the 15 hours goes into all the other chit chats, not being. So I think it's more about productivity. If you're a productive person and if you're able to even spend 35 hours of quality time in a week onto your work, I think that gets the job done. And I always believe that, balance is important. Sometimes you might want to ask your employees to push in certain down times of your business, and I think we will support it. But I think there should be a fair balance between work and life.
Since you said there is a gap, what he's trying to address, but he's trying to address it in a extreme, setting an extreme benchmark. Instead, how to actually address this issue? Because let's say 30 to 40 hours a week is a decent time for any team member, any resource to pitch in. So how to extract, or how to make, not just extract, how to make them make their 30 to 40 hours productive?
So I believe, for anybody to work with you, right, there are two kind of motivations, and that's what we use in gamification or the game theory. There's an intrinsic motivation, there's an extrinsic motivation, right? So extrinsic motivation is, easier to do. You can pay people higher, you can give them more leaves, you can, do 5 other advantages or benefits, right, to take home. What's more important is the intrinsic motivator. If you are setting a goal for yourself, for your company, as a founder or as a CEO, I think that needs to percolate down to the last level, right? If people are aligned that, okay, hey, this is a vision, we're going to work towards it, and the work is interesting, people will put in that time. If the work is not interesting at all, then you will see, productivity going down, people leaving the jobs very fast, a lot of other problems and chaos happening in companies. So that's I think what is very, very important for any founder to do. Explain your vision to the company. Make sure that people you hire are aligned to the vision. Look at the attitude of the people that you're hiring. I think that's important, and that's one problem that even I face today, right? When you're a 20-30 people team, it's much more easier to keep everybody together. Once it starts scaling to 100 people, 200 people, it's very difficult to make sure every single hire is coming with the same attitude, is a proper culture fit into your company. So a lot of people start ignoring HR as a unit, as what I feel is one of the strongest, levers in an organization. So you need to build an HR function which essentially makes sure that the kind of people that you've hired are aligned to your vision, are aligned to your goals. They carry the same vision as you do. And that really brings up productivity. And you also need to make sure that they're motivated constantly. There have been times in our organization where the work has got very mundane, and designers have come up to me and said, hey, I've been working on this project for 6 months. I'm not liking it. It's making me highly unproductive. Can you do something about it? So you need to take steps. You need to make sure that the designer is given a new project. And if it's critical, you need to make sure that you talk to them and tell them that, hey, this is the need of the hour. Can you support for now 6 months? incentivize them better, give them maybe a side project to do, get them out and put them into a new project. As a services firm, I'm telling you, right? Because there are 10,000 projects going on. Some designers might feel like, hey, I'm working on this, which is boring. Someone else is working on something which is very, very interesting. Why I'm not getting that opportunity. So you need to strike that balance so that everybody is in a growing and learning stage. Otherwise, people will drop out, right? So it's either money, it's am I growing in the organization, is what I'm doing interesting me or not. So I think these 3 points is what I always think about when I think from an employee perspective, and try to maintain that. I think that brings out the best out of people.
And there is one more factor. Toxic work environment. What's your take on that? According to you, what is a toxic work environment?
I think it is to do with a lot of people. Nobody can solve it completely. It could be our organization, outside of our organization, anywhere. It gets created with certain issues happening in the middle of the layers, below the layers. And sometimes as a founder, you won't be able to predict it also, right? Could be maybe few wrong hires in the wrong places, maybe few managers which people are not being able to work with, few managers which don't have managerial traits can also percolate this inside. Groupism within your organization can also percolate it. So as a founder, while you're at the top, there's always, you eventually know what's happening everywhere in the organization, right? A lot of times, a lot of founders ignore it because it's good for business is going great, profits are coming in. Sometimes you need to take harsh steps. You need to ensure that if there is anything wrong happening in the organization, that's course corrected. You might end up losing some of the best people you have from a functional standpoint, but I think if the culture is getting deteriorated, you need to kind of figure out why and what, and then address that to make an environment which is workable for people.
So you're expanding to US right now, right? Are you focusing only on US or European markets as well?
So I was in Europe at the start of this year. I feel it's a little more difficult market to penetrate into. Largely nuances around, particular to our industry. Europeans think that in a way design happens the best in Europe. So still a perception change that India has to bring into Europe as well. It's changing. We've gone a long way from where we were 10 years back. So that's one problem in Europe. Second is the language barrier. There's a lot of language barrier.
Is it still, even at 2023, even language is a barrier because of translation?
Certain
technology?
countries not at all. Like Berlin has grown to become a very good startup hub, but if you still go back to Paris or to France, there might be certain barriers that you might face. But Europe overall has opened up. We have 1 or 2 customers in Europe as well today. So the visit kind of paid off, but I still feel as an economy, if you want to scale really fast, US is #1 place to go to. There are a lot of upcoming markets, Indonesia, Singapore, very big markets. We have a customer in Singapore and in Indonesia as well. So those are other markets that we're looking at. Now MENA region is also opening up. Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Saudi, they have some really good companies coming in and building. Dollar rates are much better for Indian companies who are looking at offshoring and doing offshore work. US is the single biggest market till today in the world. So that's the idea. We want to kind of go to the big fish first, and then everything else can happen in parallel, right? So that's why the US, because the dollar rates are much higher. Second, the value of design is much higher in the States, right? Everybody is talking about design first approach. A lot of our clients tell us that, can you do a design workshop with us first in the US? They understand what you're talking. That is a little difficult for us to explain to an Asian market versus it as to a US market, because they're way more evolved in that sense of thinking. And I think what also works best is US is a very big geography, and it's a home to all things tech. It all starts there. So it's so much more easier to bring in customers is what I feel. The difficult part is to tap into it. Like we were having a conversation earlier, I feel you need to be there on the ground, go to the States, spend some time there, talk to people. Only then the business kind of starts coming in, because you have to build that trust. Because they're very scared of offshoring it to an Indian entity which is unknown to them on the other side of the planet.
I think with that, I came to the end of the podcast. Any closing thoughts for the audience?
All right. I think for people who want to start up, right, it's important to understand what do you really want to do in life. You can do services, you can do product, you can do maybe a business, right? A lot of my friends are running a business. They are maybe doing $1 million or less than $1 million in revenues. and they're very happy with it, right? So as a person who wants to start up, or a person who wants to switch a career into something, I think perseverance is very, very important. You need to be at it. You need to constantly keep doing things to reach where you want to reach, and upscaling is very important. I keep upskilling myself with a lot of things, because if you don't upskill, you will get obsolete. And if you look at people who I kind of talk to, people 10 years younger than me, the way of working, the thought process is very, very different, and I think we need to adapt it. Otherwise, eventually you become obsolete. You wouldn't know what's happening in the industry. So I think two things which everybody should follow is what I feel.
One more question. Sorry, how many books do you read in a year?
I don't.
You don't?
Yeah, I can't read a book, to be honest.
Okay.
But what I do is I read off the internet.
Okay.
I do deep research in certain topics and areas.
Okay.
If I'm interested in psychology, I'll probably go and read 50 articles, 60 articles. I'll get inside it. I'll spend 2 days just researching and reading, right? Recently, I've been doing research on AI in UX, because that's a very interesting problem to solve. So probably I've consumed over 250, 300 articles over the last 1 month. So that's my way of gathering data and then making sense out of it.
Okay.
I find long format reading a little challenging. So I try to do short bits and then start connecting the dots.
How about long format conversation videos like ours cater to you? Because I'm trying to understand maybe the Gen Z founders or CEOs, leaders.
I'm still not Gen Z, I'm still millennial. I'm 32 now.
Okay.
So, like, having said that, I think it's difficult. I have started to read. For me, it's always been a challenge to read long format content. I think podcasts help, because you just plug them into you're on a flight. You can kind of go through a 1 hour long conversation. And I believe I usually carry a paper and pen, so I take out notes out of everything I'm doing, because that's my way of working. It's different for different people, right? So I think consuming long format video or audio content is much more easier than reading. So I've started doing some of these, book summaries and stuff like that. That is much easier to get a gist of, what's happening. But I think to gain more focus and attention, long format reading is a good habit. So I'm trying to start to read books now, and I'm also trying to play a little bit of video games.
Okay. Which games do you play?
I just started with Assassin's Creed recently. I just started doing that because I think also helps you provide good focus.
Okay.
That's a big problem for, I think, a lot of people. So those are things that I'm experimenting with. A little bit of workout, meditation.
Okay.
I think starting there, I think eventually it will help to get to a better state.
I said we are coming to the end. But I'm extending the podcast because you said you are researching on AI on UX.
Yeah.
So I want to know more about that.
Oh wow, okay. It's a very interesting topic. So I think as the AI wave's taking over, I think a lot of jobs are going to get obsolete. Some are getting obsolete today. Some might get obsolete in another 5 years. To be ahead of the curve, one needs to adopt it, right? If you're doing any baseline job, like a lot of people in the content space who are doing cataloging, right? That's a place which AI is taking over very fast. Lot of people who are into proofreading and stuff like that, that's become completely obsolete, right? AI is kind of taken over a large chunk of it. So I feel eventually it's going to take over a lot more things in the space of UX, in the space of tech. It cannot replace us, but it can at least solve for the basic things that we do. So in UX, if you look at the basic, it's a brain map of a person, or we call it the mind map. When I look at a particular mind map, if you are
the wireframing and stuff,
you can call it wireframing or the way you operate on any digital product. So if I look at your mind map, you're used to using software, so you will have your tabs on the left, you will have your navigation on the right, your profile on the extreme right corner, you have a logout button there. Any product you use, that's like a fundamental, right? Even in a mobile app, you have buttons at the bottom, you have a hamburger menu. So there are basic mind maps which are already drawn. Now some designers or some amazing product guys are trying to change it by giving a new UI, but that's an experiment, right? If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, well, go back to the basics. So I feel a lot of these mind maps are already established, and our industry has also grown a little bigger. So I think AI can at least make away with all the basic designs that we do today.
So probably like a template, it can give you a template.
It can give you templates
where you can work on.
Right? Okay. So that basically solves for the baseline of a designer, making them a lot more productive and not doing the redundant work, right? There are very few companies that are trying to solve it today, and we are also attempting to solve a large chunk of it. Nobody has cracked it so far, is what I feel. There are 2-3 companies which have gone live with a prompt-based UI design kind of a model.
100%? 100% prompt-based without
100%. But it's weak.
Okay.
Right? If you look at the end result, a designer would say, hey, this is 10% of what I wanted. But 10% is a good start. But there's maybe one or two of them. There's a huge scope in that space. We are researching and kind of trying to build something using AI, which will enable designers to work faster. But then it's a long way. But the research is there. People are trying to comprehend it. With ChatGPT and the significant growth that it has done in the background, a lot of things like, prompt to maybe a product description is easy. Prompt to, now they've done something where you take a screenshot and it'll give you a code. I don't know how efficient it is because I've not practically used it. But if they're reaching there, I think design is not far away. So idea is to kind of take a first mover advantage, build something which will enable people to do better design using AI and not being redundant. I think a lot of softwares have solved for basic things. The softwares which give you iconography, imagery, content, textual content, your UX copies as we call it, the UX writing part. Some of these are trying to solve it. One of that is called Diagram that Figma has acquired recently.
Exactly.
So there are tools like that, but nobody's trying to do end-to-end design using AI. Well, if you could do that, that would potentially mean all your redundant basic workflows need not be designed by a designer. Right? You have a login sign up screen. You don't need a designer to do that. You have basic product description pages on e-commerce. You don't need to do that. So I think those things can be solved for, but I think a lot more complex workflows are still going to be the designers kind of doing it.
So your designers don't need to worry about it? Are they using AI because you have a design team and your designing team have adapted to AI already?
We are in the process. We are trying to explore and experiment the different tools that are available. But I think it's very important to adopt to it because you don't want to keep doing the redundant work. I think if there is something which is helping you become more efficient, you should adopt it. But well, having said that, not 100% accuracy because still new. A lot of tools might or might not give you the right end result.
Yes.
So you always have to kind of proof check it, cross verify it, and then take a decision. You can't rely blindly on the AI, which is kind of doing certain things for you. But I think it's a good start, and AI is here to stay. Unlike a W3 wave or a tech wave that came and went, I think a lot of things on the AI is going to help in a lot of different areas in all the businesses that we know today.
Yeah, with that, I think I came to the end for real. I think that's
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ronak. Thanks for your time.